Today we're talking about rejection, and we're going to give you some tips and tricks on how you can better deal with rejection and get over the fear that is stopping you from achieving your success. Make sure you got something to write with as we get started with this episode of The Philip Gagnon Show.
This is the #1 podcast for real estate brokers and leaders. You're listening to The Philip Gagnon Show.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Philip Gagnon Show. As always, I am your host, Philip Gagnon. Today I have a wonderful guest with me, as always, president of ERA Europe, ERA France, and my father, Mr. Francois Gagnon. How are you?
I'm good, Phil. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me on here.
My pleasure.
Happy to be here.
Good.
I'm glad you didn't reject me when I offered to do this.
Funny you would say that.
Yeah.
Obviously, real estate is it's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And one of the things that I think some people struggle with is the concept that selling real estate or recruiting agents or any aspect of your business involves a lot of sales. And so I think a lot of people struggle with that. In addition to struggling with that, the most important thing that comes along with that is rejection and dealing with rejection in the sales aspect. So what do you see rejection as? What is rejection? How do you deal with rejection?
Well, let's talk about what you mentioned in sales and what sales is. So I'll give you a really short and quick definition of sales and what selling is. And selling is, put in simplest terms, a transfer of emotion. Okay, so if we make it really easy, we can, really philosophize and complicate this into 98 steps and 15 books. But just to make it real simple, it's a transfer of emotion. So whether I'm trying to sell you on becoming an agent with my company, whether I'm trying to sell you on giving me the listing to sell your house, whether I'm trying to sell you on the idea of buying this house, whether I'm trying to sell you an idea, maybe it's got nothing to do with real estate, but I'm trying to sell you an idea. Selling basically comes down to a transfer of emotion. I'm excited about something and I want you to be excited about it as well. And I want you to, quote, buy into it or buy it. It could be a car, it could be a contract, it could be an idea, it could be whatever it is that you want to come up with. Now, if we're going to talk about the transfer of an emotion, first of all, if I'm not excited about whatever the shtick is that I'm trying to sell here, we got a problem on our hands. Right. If you want to be convincing, you've got to be convinced. So if I'm convinced that I've got a great thing, it's going to be a lot easier for me to be convincing. And if we look at housings and we talk about real estate salespeople, one of the things that happen all the time is people say, oh, I'm going to have no problem selling this house because I love it. I love this house.
Right.
I'm not going to buy it, but it's going to be so easy for me to sell it because I love it. Hence, the transfer emotion is very easy. I love the house. It's easy to sell it. But what if it's a house that I don't particularly like? Well, then you've got problems with the selling of it and the transferring of the emotion.
You're not excited about it. Nobody else is excited about it.
Exactly. And if I'm not excited about my services to list your house and what I can do for you in marketing your property and selling it, then it's going to be very difficult for me to convince you of that as well.
Right.
So transfer of emotion, simple definition of selling without making things complicated. And inevitably, sooner or later, if I'm trying to transfer these emotions, there's going to come points and there's going to come times where the person in front of me is not going to get excited and they're not going to want to do this and they're not going to want to handle it. They're not going to want to give me the listing. They're not going to want to come work with me. They're not going to want my product, my idea, my service. They're not going to want to buy my car. They're not going to, whatever it is. And that becomes the rejection.
So it's sort of a mild form. I think when most people hear rejection, it's the verbal slap in the face, a hard no, the door getting slammed, whatever.
Absolutely.
But there's a much more implicit or softer version of rejection, which is that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And people just saying, no, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. No. So what do you think? Do you like the car? Should we see what it looks like on paper? No, I'm not interested. I don't like the car. I don't like your dealership. I don't like you. I don't like the price.
Right.
So, okay, now, good grief. How do I deal with this? So without getting involved with how do you respond to all those things, I think one of the things that's really critical is to look at what rejection is and what the effect of that rejection is on somebody. Because rejection is something that's really very, very real, and the pain of rejection is very, very real. It's not some haphazard thing. It's not strong people don't feel rejection, weak people feel rejection. No, everybody feels rejection one way or the other, to one extent or another, and it affects different people differently. But we're going to talk about strategies of how to deal with that rejection. But I think before you get into the strategies of how to deal with it, it's important to understand that rejection is going to trigger some real, actual physical reactions. Okay.
Like what? Like what's an example?
Well,
of this?
you're going to have all of the endorphins in your body that are going to react. You're going to go into fight or flight mode. You know, if you look at animals, there's fight or flight or paralysis.
Right.
So it's one of those three. It's not just fight or flight. It's fight or flight or paralysis. And very often what happens is you're talking with somebody trying to convince them of an idea, trying to sell an idea, trying to transfer this emotion we're talking about. The person says no, you feel horrible. And you take it personally, and all of a sudden your body starts sweating and you start getting nervous. Your thoughts aren't clear anymore. And it happens to so many salespeople. You walk out of the house, if you're in a real estate setting, and you say, oh, I should have said this and I should have said that. And why didn't I think of this? And why didn't I think of that? And I'll tell you why, because you panicked.
Right.
And the reason you panicked is because you were in this fight or flight or paralysis mode because of the pain that rejection causes. Now, the reason that it causes such pain, and it's important to understand that, is that if we look at ourselves as being evolutionary beings, okay, so human beings were around for hundreds of thousands of years, or whatever you want to consider the beginning of time. Human beings were hardwired to fear and to flee and to run away from rejection. And the reason that we're hardwired for that is because if we were not hardwired for that, it would mean that we'd be okay with rejection, when in fact, if we go back in time, rejection meant perhaps certain death. Now, here's what I mean by this. So we live in tribes. Okay. And we're these communal beings that we all live together, and we live in a tribe together, whatever my tribe is. And I'm the Hutu tribe, and across the mountain is the Wutu tribe, let's say. Well, here's what happens is between me and the other tribe, there's mountains that are dangerous.
Right.
There's the weather that's dangerous. There's animals that potentially could eat me.
Sure.
And the other tribe may come and take us over, which means that if I do something in my tribe that gets me excluded from my tribe, I am left absolutely to myself, naked in the wilderness to try to survive. Good luck. Right. That's not going to happen. You survive because you're in your group. You survive because you're in your tribe. You have more protection. You have more understanding. You have more resources, more knowledge, more access to food. If I'm by myself in the wilderness, I become anybody and everybody and everything's prey. So that's extremely dangerous. So is this nature, nurture? So did I learn that rejection was bad? You don't have to learn it. It's absolutely hardwired in you.
You feel it the first time.
You feel it, and it's hardwired in you that it's horrible, and it sucks. And the problem is that we don't have the same rejection. If I call up a seller and I say, look, would you like me to help you sell your house? And the guy goes, drop dead. I hate real estate agents, for example. That's painful, and that hurts. The truth is, I'm not going to die from this.
Right.
He didn't come to my house and try to burn it down or blow it up or shoot me. He just hung up on me. Why is it so freaking painful? Why does it hurt so much? It's not because I'm weak or it's because there's something wrong with me. It's because I'm designed to fear and to run away from that rejection because of how painful it is. And it's painful because it could mean my demise and my death. So in order to prolong the species was designed that you do not get excluded from your group. Rejection means exclusion. Exclusion equals death. So you don't want to get excluded from your group. So the pain is very real. And the problem is today, not back thousands of years ago, but today, that the danger is not real. The danger is not the way
it's a perceived.
It's a danger. Perceived, but the emotion and everything that it triggers is very much real, and the hurt is very much real. And because it's psychological, it's even worse because I can relive it over and over and exaggerate it over and over and relive it over and over. It's a horrible, painful thing. It's absolutely terrible. So I have to understand that there's nothing wrong with me if I hate rejection, if I don't like rejection. It's not something that there's wrong with my programming. So, people call you and they hang up the phone on you. You should learn to enjoy that. No, you're better off doing meth in order to try to enjoy it.
But let me ask you this. I mean, you say that it's painful, and I think that's probably the feeling that most people have when there is rejection. Mm-hmm. Is it actual pain or is it discomfort?
Well, I think it depends on the individual, and some people might be discomfort. But
I think that's important. It's an important nuance because with pain, you never get used to it. And you take painkillers to get over it or coping mechanisms.
Right.
But with discomfort, you can learn to deal with it and to adapt and work with it.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. However, I think that today we've got some strategies we can talk about on dealing with the pain.
Okay.
And I like to call it pain because I don't like rejection. I never have liked rejection, and it freaking hurts me.
Yeah.
But I've had to learn to deal with it and to find ways to deal with it. Otherwise, I wasn't going to go anywhere and I wasn't going to do anything because it's much easier to stay in your office or stay at your desk and go on Facebook and go on Twitter and go on Instagram and send out a few messages and click on a few likes and there's no rejection and nothing happens, but you didn't get rejected. So that was a good day. Nobody told me to drop dead. So that felt really good, but you didn't go anywhere. Well, yeah, but at least I didn't get hurt. So, and I didn't have to feel his pain. So I think we're going to talk about certain things that you can do to be able to deal with that pain. And again, just on that issue of what that means is it's important to realize that it's a very real thing. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And it's just that if you understand it and you accept it, then you can move on from it and you can do certain things to learn to deal with it. But it's a very normal human emotion. And you're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. It affects different people differently, and some people would be more susceptible than others, we'll say to it. But overall, people don't like it, and they flee from it. So you do anything and everything you can to avoid it. So, I mean, stupid example. Let's take the example of the bar. So girls are at the bar, and the guys are at the bar. And the girls are with their girlfriends looking at the guys, and the guys are with their boyfriends, not the boyfriends, but their guy friends looking at the bar. And all of a sudden they're looking at each other and it's like, hey, so, let's go over and talk to her. Well, crap, I'm not doing that unless I have 3-4 more vodkas before I go talk to her. So I'm going to go ahead, and after I've got 3 or 4 or 5 more vodkas, then I go say, hey,
a little liquid courage.
You want to dance? Liquid courage, perfect, exactly. You want to dance? You want to talk or whatever? And if she says drop dead, you're an idiot, then it's okay. And that's one of the techniques we'll talk about is I've been desensitized to it.
Right.
And I've been desensitized artificially through alcohol. Now, I'm not suggesting, and this is really important to make a point here. You see where I'm going with this?
Your prospecting calls after a couple of drinks.
No, I can just see big people listening. Yeah, I listened to Philip's podcast. He had this drunk guy on there who's saying that if you want to go ahead and prospect, you should have 2 or 3 vodkas with breakfast, and then you go knock on doors. And you're not going to knock them. You're going to knock them out is what you're going to do. No, that's obviously not what we're suggesting and not what the idea is. But the reason that happens is because that alcohol has desensitized you to, it hasn't made you courageous. It's just made you desensitized to the pain and the
potential
fear
pain
of the rejection.
Yeah,
exactly. So you go talk to the girl and she says, drop dead. That is so painful. You'd rather not talk to her than risk getting hurt.
Sure.
You have the vodka. It becomes easier to go talk to her, which is horrible, but that's the way it is.
Right.
Okay. So there's ways to deal around it that you don't have to do that and that you don't have to be drinking or taking chemical substances before you go make calls. But there's things that you can do that will help you overcome it. Let's put it that way.
So what are some of these tactics?
Okay. So let's talk about some ideas. And I think the best way that I can illustrate these things and what they are is, first of all, is what I like to call the next concept. Okay.
So what is that?
And I'll tell you exactly. Years ago, I walked into a bakery. As you know, we lived in France. Mm-hmm. And I walked into actually, it was not a bakery. It was a butcher shop. I'm sorry. Walked into a little butcher shop and I wanted to get some ham. And I wanted to, you can buy, at the time, I was in a hotel and I wanted to get a small quantity of ham. And so I asked the guy, I said, I'd like to get 3 slices of the ham that you've got, whatever. And the guy looks at me and goes, we're out of it. Sorry, we sold out. We don't have any more. And then there's a bunch of people in his shop. It's the end of the day. Everybody's looking to get food to go home to make dinner. And then what he said after that completely changed my view on things, because I was expecting him to go, oh my goodness, we're out. The customers want the ham. We don't
get you
have the ham.
something else.
This is terrible.
What else?
Can I get you something else? What are we going to do? And I feel awful. He didn't do any of that. The guy looked at me and he said, we don't have any more ham. And I looked at him and go, oh. And then he went, next. And that was it. That's all the guy said. Next. I mean, he didn't even suggest anything. He didn't promote anything. He didn't comment on anything. He just looked at me and went, next. And I thought, what? Like, that's it? Aren't you devastated that in your eating establishment,
so
you don't have the ham? I was like, no, he wasn't devastated at all. He didn't care. He just completely went over his head and he was on to the next person. So my point is that when you're prospecting, one of the things that you can do is, especially that, is put that mindset first and foremost in your mind, that when the person says to you, I'm not interested, forget about it, particularly in a prospecting concept, just next, and move on. Just go on to the next one. Don't sit there and beat yourself up and say, oh, wait a minute. What should I have said? What could I have said? Why did he say that? Why would he say that? Who does he think I am? How can he treat me that way? Should I let him treat me that way? And what about this? And then you've got this mental knots in your head, and you spend all day long making one call and then spend 4 or 5 hours analyzing
it and calling a therapist.
Total waste of time.
Right.
Total waste of time. Just think of the butcher. Okay, you're not interested. I don't have ham. You want ham? I don't have it. Next, let's go on to the next guy and keep on moving. Okay, so the first point is don't dwell on it and keep on moving, just like the butcher did.
Right.
Next tactic. The next tactic is what I like to call using Mr. Spock. So, and Mr. Spock was absolutely phenomenal.
From Star Trek.
Mr. Spock was phenomenal at dealing with rejection. Now, for those of you who don't know, there is a TV show. It was very popular.
And movies. Recently movies, yeah.
This TV show was big in the 70s.
It was, yeah.
Which obviously I remember quite well. And Mr. Spock is one of the characters. Yeah, I have to understand, Mr. Spock is half Klingon and
Vulcan.
half Vulcan
yeah.
and half human. So his father is Vulcan, his mother was human, and the peculiarity of the Vulcans is that they have no emotion. Mm-hmm. So Vulcans don't feel emotions. Humans do, obviously. So you have Captain Kirk,
right? Overly emotional.
The absolutely quintessential Captain Kirk. Mr. Spock, what are we going to do? The enemy's coming. The planets are coming at us. We have to do something. And what would Spock do is he'd look at Kirk and he'd say, Captain Kirk, fascinating. That's all he said. Right. He looked at him and went, fascinating. Now, what that does, which is critical to understand the mindset, is fascinating, leaves the problem and the reaction with the person that had it, and it doesn't make me take it on.
Yeah, so many times people want to transfer their baggage to you.
Absolutely.
And they get all excited and yell and scream and whatever, and they want you to take it so they don't have to carry it anymore.
Exactly.
By not taking it, you don't have this burden you got to carry.
And what's important to keep in mind is that it's your choice as to whether you will take it or not.
Right.
Now, I can sit there and go, how could he talk like that to me? And what is he saying? And how rude? And what is wrong with these people? And I'm not going to let them talk like that to me. And I'm going to set him. You can do all of that, which means that basically you're taking it on, and now it becomes your fight, and it becomes your problem. Or you
got to find somebody to give it to now.
And you got to find somebody to share that crap with.
Right.
Or you can look at them and say, fascinating. And that's it. Mr. Kirk, Captain Kirk, would go crazy because the planet's about to blow up. And then Spock was not doing whatever. And he'd say, Spock, you pointed ear idiot. What is it? Because Spock, for those remember, I pointed ears. Spock, you pointed ear idiot. What is the matter with you? Why don't you react and do something? And Spock would look at Captain Kirk and he'd say, Captain, fascinating. And that was it. And I mean, the whole thing got deflated. That was the end of the conversation.
Right.
So, second tactic is take on the approach of Mr. Spock. Leave the reaction, leave the problem, leave all that negativity, all the venom, all the pus that they're throwing at you, whatever you want to call it. Leave it with them. Don't take it.
Right.
Just go, fascinating. And it's almost though you're looking at the situation from outside of yourself. Mm-hmm. You're looking at them, looking at you, and you're looking at yourself, looking at them, and leave it there because it's their problem and not yours. One of the best ways to do that is if you're going to prospect, to help you keep things in perspective, don't do it alone. Do it with somebody else. So go with 2 people. So that way
you're talking about like going door knocking or something like that?
If you're going to go door knocking, you're going to go out on the street, you're going to go pass out business cards, you're going to go to a seller to try to get the listing. Go with somebody else. If you go with somebody else, then you desensitize. You're able to take on that situation, and the two of you can help put things in perspective and say, isn't that fascinating? So if I'm feeling as though I'm being attacked by somebody for rejecting my idea, and I'm feeling like I'm being attacked for it, then I've got somebody else that I can bounce off of who can say, isn't that fascinating? And I go, yeah, you're right, it is fascinating. And that puts my mind frame back into the situation so that I'm no longer panicking and then having all of the endorphins and whatever you want, my amygdala that's freaking out and blowing up and everything else, because I'm trying to figure out, do I go fight or flight or paralysis, or what do I do? And how does this work out? Somebody helps put me back into the right context. Says, isn't that fascinating? And I go, yeah, that's right. It is fascinating. Leave it with them. It's fascinating. Here's something else that you can try is turn it into a game. Okay, so turn prospecting into a game. And what happens is that people say, we're going to prospect and we got to get appointments. And we're prospecting an appointment. I say, do it the other way. Do it the other way. Because you don't enjoy it. You know you have to do it. It's like a necessary evil. Right. I've got to go talk to strangers. The number of people I can talk to in a day, the number of strangers I can talk to in a day is going to be a direct reflection of how much business I'm going to do. So make it a game. And the game is that you do it and you say, I'm going to do it and talk to 20 people, 25 people. And once I've gotten rejected 25 times, I'm going to stop. Now, if I get an appointment, great. But if I don't, I'm going to keep going until it's been 25 times. Not until I'm dying on the floor. Not until I've done this for 7 hours, because it hurts too much. Right. It's kind of like going to the gym. You know, if you haven't gone to the gym and you go for the first time and you go crazy, you're going to be so sore the next day. You're never going to want to do this again. Right. So you're better off the first time you go, take it easy, go light. The next day you want to be a little sore, but you don't want to be in a paralysis state in the hospital. Right. So you're a little bit sore, and then you feel like doing it again. If you go out there and you go, I prospected for 7 hours, I didn't get anywhere. Well, of course not. You first of all, you suck. Second of all, you sound
shut down after 2 hours.
It's absolutely horrible. It's a horrible situation.
Right.
So the best thing you can do is say, I'm going to prospect for 20 minutes. I'm going to prospect until I get 20 no's. Or I'm going to leave my house in the morning. This is what I tell agents all the time, and this works on both coasts or in both continents, whether we're talking about the U.S. or all over Europe, where we've got 1,200 offices in Europe, is we say, leave your house in the morning with 25 business cards, and don't leave. Don't go home. Don't go home until you've left all of those business cards
and got some back.
And hopefully got some back, but at least you gave them out. You gave them out to people, and don't give all 25 to the same person.
Yeah, because I've seen people just take the last 10, throw them in the garbage can. Oh, no, I put them out.
Right. Or don't leave them on the counter of a restaurant or a shop next to the cash register.
That's what I mean by get something back.
Right. So leave them with people, meet people and say, hey, by the way, I'm in real estate, or I sell cars, or I sell annuities, or I'm in a title company, or a mortgage company, or whatever you do, and say, here's my card. If you have any need, you know somebody, here, give them my card, and don't hesitate to call me back. So when do I go home? Well, after you've given out the 20. That's when you go home. How do you know you had a good day? You gave out the 20. Well, yeah, but what if I didn't get any business from it? Don't worry about it. The business will come. If you do 20 a day, 5 days a week, that's 100 a week. That's 400 a month. If you do that every week, 4 weeks a month. That's a huge amount of new contacts, which is probably in a month, which is probably
more than you're doing now.
More than they do in a year.
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet.
For sure.
So all you got to do is turn it into a game. 20 a day, make it into a game. Here's the next thing, or the next point for dealing with it, is to desensitize yourself. Now, how do you desensitize yourself? As you know, Phil, since I'm your father. I'm your father. I'm highly allergic to cats.
Right.
I love cats. I have nothing against cats. I love them, but I'm very allergic to them. I start petting a cat, my eyes blow up, my nose starts running, my throat is itching, my eyes are itching. I mean, I'm a mess. So several years ago, I decided to go ahead and get treated in order to be able to deal with cats. You go to people's houses and they got cats.
Right.
So the way they do the treatment, and this is really fascinating, is I thought they gave you medication to overcome it or whatever. What they do is they inject you with, I'm not sure exactly what it is. It was like cat juice or something. I don't know.
Dander.
I don't know what it is. Whatever. But they put a cat in the blender and then they take out drops and they put it in a syringe and they give you cat juice. Now, the first time they gave it to me, the amount was so so small. It was less than you'd put on the head of a needle on a pin. And so they ejected me with that. My arm blew up. But then you go back every week, and each week they give you a little more, and they give you a little more, and they give you a little more, until eventually, after 3 years, I was getting to the point that, I don't know, probably shooting me up with the whole freaking cat by then. And I didn't feel anything. My body was not freaking out because my body had become desensitized to it. And that's what the problem is with allergies, is your body becomes overly sensitive to something it should not be sensitive to. Right. Cat dander is not harmful. You're not going to die from it. It's just stuff that gets into your body, and your body thinks there's something
freaks
wrong,
out for whatever reason,
which is why it starts attacking it and turns into an allergy. So the reason I'm saying all this is one of the things that you got to do with prospecting and with rejection to be able to deal with it is to desensitize yourself to it. If you prospect once a month, every time you do it, or even once a week, it's like it's the first time you're doing it, and it's going to be disaster. If I had gone for allergy shots and I went once every 6 months, every time I went would have been like the first shot. It's horrible. So I had to make a commitment to go once a week, which is what's recommended. And every week you go, make sure you have no adverse reactions. And then they up the dose a little bit. And by upping the dose, your body becomes desensitized to it. Prospecting is the same way. Dealing with rejection is the same way. You've got to get desensitized to it with the understanding, psychologically, intellectually, understanding that once I become desensitized to it, it's going to still be there. I will still get rejected. It's just not going to hurt as much.
Right.
So I haven't removed the rejection and I haven't removed the pain, but I have gotten used to it. So as a result of it, it doesn't hurt so bad. And it's not just such a problem and such a horrible situation for me to be dealing with that rejection because I've desensitized myself to it.
So let's say I hate rejection. It's painful, uncomfortable, whatever we want to label it. I don't like the rejection. I'm not really doing any prospecting now. You know, I
absolutely
post on Facebook and send some emails automatically and think I'm going to get some stuff. Would it work to just make like one call a day and just start with one?
Start with one
a week. I mean,
I'm sure you've seen like right now going on social media. I think a lot of posts on Facebook is how do you get to do 100 push-ups?
Yeah, the 100 push-up challenge.
The 100 push-up challenge.
Right.
Like, how does that work?
The first day is 3 or whatever.
Exactly. And then each day you slowly, incrementally
add one.
In one. And then you go up, you maybe go back 2, and then you go up 4, and you go back 1, and you go up 5, you go back 2, whatever the deal is. Same thing. So don't do the push-up challenge, do the prospecting challenge. And the prospecting challenge is rather than doing it and say, okay, I'm going to prospect, and if I don't get an appointment, then it's because I failed, it's because I suck, it's because I'm not good at it, it's because it doesn't work in my area, because we got a special area where you can't talk to people about buying or selling or anything, because you got to wait. It's very different, it's totally different. You got to wait for them to fall out of the sky to come to you, and that's the only way it works. Well, do it the other way. Just say, I'm going to do it until I get rejected 2, 3, 4 times. And if I get rejected 5 times in 10 minutes, then I'm done. Then that's it. You're done. You got rejected 5 times. You're done. Now, and tomorrow you get rejected 10 times. And then what you realize is all of a sudden you realize and your body goes, wait a minute, we got rejected. We're not dying. I'm not rolling on the floor, not having to go to the hospital. I'm not running to have a vodka or take an Ativan or whatever I need to deal with this.
Right.
So I'm okay. So therefore I can get rejected 15 times. And then all of a sudden in those numbers, before you know it, you start having people who say, yeah, and they're not rejecting you.
Sure.
And then you go, wow. And then you start slowly turning the machine around and turning it into a positive experience instead of a negative experience. So do the push-up challenge, but do the prospecting challenge. Start off and say, okay, I'm going to do 2 calls today. Don't worry about the results. The success is not in the appointments that you get or the stuff you sell. The success is in being able to overcome the fear of the rejection. That's the success. So don't worry. Of course, you need to sell stuff. So you can't say, oh, I got rejected 6 hours a day. It's wonderful. I love it. I've doubled my salary.
What do you do for work? I get rejected.
I get rejected. Yeah, exactly. Right. No, the point is that as you do it, you will become better.
Sure.
And as you do it, it'll become easier for you to deal with. And as you do it, it'll become easier and you'll do more of it. Hence, where you'll have more contacts and more success.
So one thing that I used to hear a lot, and I don't hear so much anymore, but just because doing different things now and talking to different people, one of the things that I used to hear a lot was, well, I left voicemails. So I prospected for an hour, nobody answered, I left voicemails.
Yep.
So is that a form of rejection, like an implicit rejection? Do I keep going until I actually talk to people? I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
Where does that fall into that mix?
Well, what's a voicemail? What's a voicemail? Why don't you just open the door and scream?
It's checking a box for sure, but I mean, does that qualify as a call, 2 calls?
No,
Right.
that's not rejection.
So then in that case, what we are going for, and I don't know if I'm stealing any of your thunder here of what's coming.
But I got so much thunder.
This concept of go for the no, that you want people to tell you no.
Right.
Which is sort of like the second evolution of all of this stuff.
Right.
Is that you want people to tell you no.
Absolutely. Because if you don't, leaving a voicemail, you might as well just open your door and scream out the door and say, hey, call me back. I want to sell you something. Okay. Oh, you left a voicemail. Instead of leaving it on the phone, you left it at the front door. What the hell's the difference?
Right.
It's the same thing. It's pointless. So you've got to leave messages, of course, and you hope people will call you back. But then here's how I know that I'm talking to people that are scared is I say, did you call them? And they say, yes, I did. And I go, did you talk to them? And they go, no. And I go, so what happened? They go, I left a message. And I go, okay. Did you call them back? And I go, no.
Well, no, I left a message.
And I said, why didn't you call them back? Well, because I don't want to be too pushy.
Right.
No, don't be pushy. Don't be worried about being pushy. Just be freaking alive. Leaving a message and walking away is nothing. Because on the other end, it's so easy to go, I didn't hear it. Delete. I don't want it. Or I missed it. Or, oh, yeah, I need to call them back. But then my life goes on and I forget to call them back.
You get the message 8 o'clock at night and then the next morning you forget.
Totally. Sure. So leaving a message, you got to leave a message. But that counts for nothing. Right. It counts for nothing. It can't, like I said, open your front door and scream, hey, who wants to do business with me? The same effect as leaving a voicemail. Because if you yelled out the front door, somebody's going to go, what are you yelling about? Oh, I want to know if you do business with me. There's 10 people. One of them will say, yeah, maybe. What business are you in? The same hit ratio as you would with a freaking voice message.
Sure.
So voice message, yes, of course, obviously leave a message. But you just call them back and you don't need to be pushy or aggressive. You just need to be convinced that you've got a service or a product that can help them. And all you're doing is offering it to them. If I had a product to help you, to solve your problems, a service that can help you, would you be interested? Would you want to hear about it? I think I'm good. I think I can help you. But the only way we know that for sure is if you and I talk. When could we talk about your problem? Would you be interested? Oh, I told you I'm not interested. Okay. You're not interested now, but you may be interested tomorrow, next week. I'll call back. It's not a problem. And it's not a problem for me, and I don't mind doing it. How often does it happen that, you hear people who do prospecting and they call and the person at the other end says, oh, what a coincidence. We were just talking about this yesterday. Yeah, so funny you would call. I was talking with my wife or my husband or my neighbor or whatever. We were just talking about this yesterday. How funny is it that you would call? It's not funny. I've called 1,000 freaking people. Somebody had to be talking about this yesterday. There's no coincidence here. But to them, it's a coincidence.
Sure.
But if you never call anybody,
that's never going to happen.
Then there's never going to be a coincidence. It's never going to happen. It's like the old saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. So you keep prospecting, you keep talking to people, you keep overcoming that rejection, and then sooner or later you're going to hit. And in kind of concluding and closing this discussion on rejection, I think rejection can do one of two things for you. And rejection can either define you, and by define you, I mean that rejection is going to cause you so much pain and so much anxiousness and angst and everything else that you're going to stop and you're going to settle for what you got because you're never going to have any more unless you're willing to get people to reject you and say no and that they're not interested. So it defines you, and that's unfortunate, and that's a possibility. Mm-hmm. Or rejection can refine you. And refine you means that it makes you better. And it makes you better because it makes you more tenacious. It's going to give you more stick-to-itiveness, as we say. It's going to make you more determined. It's going to make you practice more. It's going to make you rehearse more. It's going to, help you strengthen your backbone and your mental abdominals so that when you get punched in the gut with somebody saying no, it's not going to hurt so much. And that's going to refine you. So it's your choice that either I let the rejection define me by giving up, or I let it refine me by making me better and putting me in an opportunity and a possibility to get the results that I could get by proposing my service to more people. So I hope that helps. And I hope it gets somebody to not be afraid to go talk and make it fun. Do it as a team. Go with 2 people. Remember Spock. Fascinating. And if the people are horrible, just next them and go on and keep going and just get out there and get 5, 10, 20, 30 people to say, I'm not interested. You're going to hit them, and you're certainly going to do more than those that are not doing it because they're not out there. And if you're out there talking to people, you've got a chance of getting the business.
Well, thank you again so much for being here. This was wonderful, very informative. President of ERA Europe, ERA France, and my father, Francois.
Thank you, Philip.
And that concludes our show for this week. Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to like us on Facebook to get updated with the newest shows when they come out each week. And you can also send questions or comments to us on Facebook or email at philip@3datapulse.com. That's the number 3datapulse.com, philip@3datapulse.com. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next week.
This was the Philip Gagnon Show. Be sure to visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Philip Gagnon Show and join in on the conversation, access the show notes, and discover some fantastic bonus content. The Philip Gagnon Show.